Welcome back to Marketing Talks with Ivan. I am your host, Ivan, and welcome back to an exciting new episode. Today, on this episode, I have a very dear friend of mine, Divyesha, who I've known for the longest time. And today, we're going to be talking something very exciting. It's all about influences, but with a twist. I'm joined by someone who I go way back in time. We actually met at the university while I went into a more marketing kind of path and strategy and so on. She specialized in business management with a focus on HR. She built her entire career in recruitment and she helps companies find the right kind of people and build one of the strongest teams out there. Now, you might be all wondering, why should I actually listen someone who is from HR on a marketing podcast? But here's the thing, and here's the main catch. Recruitment and influencer marketing are almost the same. In recruitment, it's all about evaluating the candidates. Are they the right kind of fit for the company? And same goes with influencers as well. Are they relevant? Are they authentic? And are they able to drive the right kind of return on investment for the brand? And at the core, it's all about the human element. Divesha, are you excited today? Let's go for it.
I am super excited. First of all, thank you so much, Ivan, for having me on your podcast. I've been regularly following your content and I love it. And I'm so happy that I can finally join. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for the really kind words. It really means a lot. And I'm really glad that you're finding this really helpful and that you've been following it for the longest time. You all must be wondering, like, why did I actually bring Divyesha on this podcast? So here's the reason why. So I wanted to actually relate her background in terms of recruiting with influencer marketing. So this is where everything comes into play. So now, Divyesha, before we dive into the full influencer part of it, I want to take a step back right now. Like, why did you choose HR in the first place out of all the different kinds of courses out there? What drew you so much towards recruitment? I really want to understand.
Right. So I think this goes way back when I was in school, probably in 10th grade. There was this chapter called staffing in business studies, which I was really intrigued by. I would reread this chapter for fun. So I think that's when I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And it was around the same time where I was kind of conflicted if I should go with psychology or if I should go with business. And, psychology is more about understanding human behavior. Why do people make certain decisions, and what drives them to do things that they do. And business is more about strategy and structure, which I also liked. So I did end up choosing commerce, but at the same time I don't think my curiosity regarding human behavior has ever ended. And I think recruitment has been that platform, which is like a perfect amalgamation of both these worlds. And a lot of people think that HR is a lot of serious stuff, and it's been stereotyped in a certain way, but actually it is quite a fulfilling job. You're helping people find a place where they can thrive, and yeah, it's about their livelihood. So I think I'm very happy right now in this field. And like you said, the connection between recruitment and influencer marketing is quite a bit. Like, there are a lot of commonalities, which I can't wait to discuss in the rest of the podcast.
Me too as well. And one thing I wanted to add also, like, because of recruitment and HR, many of the people's dreams are fulfilled because you make that
Exactly.
thing happen, right? Because you try to find the right kind of candidates, and many of people's dreams are fulfilled over here. You make things happen for them. And now let's
Yes.
move to the main part. And I was actually very curious about this topic because I've been hearing a lot about it. Parasocial relationships. Now let me keep it in the most simple way possible. So it's more like when people like know this celebrity or influencer, but this feels like a more like one-sided relationship. I've seen this a lot in K-pop, for example. Like fans just don't like their music. You know this. I know you're a huge K-pop fan. I can name all of the K-pop bands that you actually like, but like you have
Yes.
always felt like that very kind of close connection with them. And that is what actually got me into thinking, like, what, I see some real connection happening over here. Like you idealize them to a very like everything about their lives from the start to the very finish. Like you follow them in so much of detail. Sometimes I am amazed. like that you know so
Mhm.
much about like sometimes even when you tell me their stories, I was like, wait, did you actually meet them in person, or is this like you've seen them like on YouTube, on Insta, TikTok and all, like you know everything about them? How do you think that brands should leverage this kind of relationship while choosing this kind of influences? What's your take on this?
Right. Thank you for the question. I think the whole fundamental of having this podcast is a big part of it is that yes, I am a K-pop fan, and I think that really connects to this whole topic. Like you mentioned, parasocial relationships have been a big thing in today's times, and just to give an idea of what it is, it's basically like a one-sided emotional bond that fans or like say the general public forms with this public figure or with an influencer. And of course, the influencer does not really know about the existence of this person technically. But I mean, things are changing today. I mean, the influencers do know a lot about their fans as well. But if you have 22 million fans, it's not possible that you personally know them. So, how exactly is this created? Basically, I can also relate this to HR. A lot of you folks might be working in corporate jobs, and you work for companies. You know about the mission and vision of a company, and you kind of work in that way. But have you really met the founder or CEO of the company? No. You still feel like you understand what their vision is. So I think it's very similar in that sense. If I have to speak from a psychological standpoint, this would tap into the attachment theories. When we are fans of a certain influencer or a public figure, we feel a real connection with them. It's almost like a mimic of a real connection. And if you see from the marketing point of view, we have two types. There is celebrity marketing and you have word of mouth, which are completely different types of marketing, right? So I think with this, they kind of merge into one. If I have to give an example, basically, I've been a BTS fan for 9+ years, which is almost a decade now.
Basically, ever since we met.
Ever since we met. That is so true. Oh my God. So yeah, that's a really long time. And when one of the members goes live on a platform and they're just sharing their daily thoughts or what is happening in their life, it doesn't really feel like I'm watching a celebrity. It's more like I'm catching up with an old friend. Just like when I'm catching up with you, it's a very similar vibe. If a person like that is recommending a product to me and they're not really advertising it, it's something that they've used and they're like, this is a good product. I would see this as a friend's recommendation. This would be categorized under word of mouth rather than a celebrity influence. So I feel like because parasocial relationships exist, this kind of combination can be witnessed. And I also think it is quite rare, in today's time where there is so much AI and people do not trust anything online. It is so rare that such a relationship exists. So I think what marketers really need to focus on is fans who are who do have emotional equity. It's not about like running behind trends. And I've been a BTS fan for so long that I have seen their journey. So they've built their brand on authenticity, on being vulnerable, and this is exactly what marketers need to focus on. We're not running behind trends. We are looking for someone who is authentic and knows their audience very well. So yeah, I think that's like the biggest takeaway from this kind of relationship.
And how would you connect your field of recruitment with influencer marketing? How would you connect the dots here? Because I feel that there's a lot in common in these two aspects of it.
Right. Like you mentioned, there's a lot common, but at the same time, recruitment is about, performing a job. It is about revenue. And so is, doing marketing for a brand. We are focusing on the revenue, but I think where it differs is that influencers not only are focused on revenue, they are here to create an impact. You might have earned the sales that you had targeted for a brand, but if an influencer has done a fantastic job, this is something that you're going to remember for years to come. And the same goes for recruitment. People come and leave in companies, but the work that they've done has probably created so much for a company that they'll forever remember. So I think that's the beauty of having this connection.
Exactly. And I would also say that after you do all of this, the main thing is also loyalty. Both of this
Yes.
have the same thing in common, because when you're more transparent about things, like for example, even you gave the example of BTS, the show, they take you through their whole routine and all. There's certain kind of connection which is built between you and the member of the BTS band.
Hmm.
No matter what happens, you'll always know, yeah, this is someone I can trust. You see like a more genuine personality.
Exactly. Yes.
Now, moving over, like in recruitment, I know you're constantly evaluating candidates and so on. How can you translate this into marketing, and how should actually brands evaluate influencers before bringing them into this to promote products or services and so on? What should they actually look for? So, what
Right.
should be the ideal criteria, would you say?
In HR, for while evaluating candidates, there is a lot of parameters. We're not just looking at skills. We look at whether they're culturally aligned with the company's, viewpoint. And I think the same goes for influencer marketing. You're looking for an influencer that is going to represent your brand at the end of the day. There are things that are considered quite important, and first of which would be being the right fit. You can have a skincare brand, and you know that you're going to choose a beauty influencer, but again, is your brand the one that promotes sustainability, or is it more of a luxury brand? So if there is a mismatch in the kind of beauty creator that you're bringing on board, then it can really not work out with the audience. So I think fit is one of the things, and the other thing is value system. Again, you have an influencer that has been promoting sustainability for the longest time, and their audience is also used to that. They probably have a very similar lifestyle. And if this influencer has been picked for fast fashion, it's going to contradict quite badly, and the audience is probably not going to take that well. So again, that can lead to like controversies. So just to avoid that, I think being relevant is very important. And finally, like you mentioned, trust is very important. Being authentic is like the main thing choosing an influencer. They have their audience, and audience is built on trust. So again, like, I would like to give an example here. You must have heard of Cat's Eye, who have recently
The
done
gap.
a campaign. Yes, the Gap jeans for the better in denim. That was the campaign that they launched this autumn, and I'm a fan of that campaign, because I think, except apart from them being exceptionally wonderful in the song, I think it's a great marketing campaign. Where I saw this interview where they were talking about how Gap did not really just force their outfits onto them. This was more about like, you tell us how you want to do this ad. It was, they were given the freedom to kind of blend in their ideas with the company's, with the brand's outlook. So I think they've earned like what, 44 million views, and it's completely viral for a very valid reason. So yeah, I think just having an authentic and a relevant connection with your influencer is like one of the most important things.
I really like the whole point that you brought up about relevancy, because I can directly tie it to even return on investment. Because if I feel that the influencer is relevant to the audience,
Hmm.
automatically people will connect, and at the same time there will be less chances that the campaign will not work. Because if you hire the wrong kind of influencer, everything goes for a toss, everything is going to go downhill from there. Because end of the day, it's all about relation. How can does this influencer actually support this product in the right way?
Exactly. Yes. I think that's why I think it's a great campaign. It's going to be a perfect example of how, influencer marketing is done. I think another thing was that, the brand has not only just given these influencers like, this is our brand, please endorse it. I've seen videos on TikTok where they actually teach the tutorial of the dance. Like, I don't think Gap really needed to do that, but they completely were invested in this whole campaign, and I think that's great for audiences to see.
Yeah, and they've basically started a whole new trend. And by the way, this
Exactly.
song is way back in time. We've heard of this song, but it was like, I think that's what also kicked it off, also because it's
Exactly.
bringing back the old days into the present.
Yes, it was just perfect.
So, Divesha, now moving on, How do you think that age group plays an important role in all of this? Like, I know younger audiences and all often rely on TikTok creators, and if you go for a much older audiences, they usually rely on YouTube or maybe even LinkedIn voices. So how would you actually connect in terms of HR and all of this? Do you see that there is an overlap in terms of the audiences over here, like the younger versus the older hires?
Okay, I think this is a great question because, yes, age does play a very important role in this whole dynamic. And I think even in HR, we're not just hiring based on skills, we're looking at the generational dynamics, we're looking at communication styles, most importantly. When it comes to marketing, I would like to kind of focus on the media richness theory. This is basically something that you would be able to understand the most because your content is on LinkedIn, it's on TikTok, it's everywhere. So basically what this theory speaks about is the different levels of richness that each of these channels give. So for example, TikTok is a very fast kind of a channel. You have 20-second, 50-second clips, and the attention span is very less, and makes sense why the younger audiences are hooked to it. Whereas LinkedIn is more slow paced, and of course things are changing on LinkedIn as well, but that's basically the standard. This is the basic standard of how you can market your brand accordingly. But it's very important to understand that people are not just limited to age, to demographics. It's how they see themselves. Again, we are born in the late 90s. We kind of have, I know friends who think of themselves as millennials, but I personally feel more of a Gen Z. I would like to explain this with an example. Like, we all know about the Stanley, a tumbler. What is it? It's basically a insulated water bottle, pretty much a heavy one. But yes, it's more than a water bottle right now. It's become a sort of like a social signal where people carry it for the trend. It's less
And
about.
I would also add to that, it's more like a status as well, because when you carry a standee, everyone knows what bottle are you carrying. The shape of the bottle plays a important role over here. You know the straw, the structure of the bottle. Yeah, this person is carrying a Stanley.
Exactly, exactly. And I think so. I think another example is Labubu, which has been trending forever, pretty much. So again, it started off with an influencer, and all the people in the younger generation started having it. But at this point, if you see, there is no age restriction. I see almost anyone and anybody have it. Again, marketers need to focus on age, of course, which is a very important demographic. But again, age is not everything. They need to focus on how people think rather than what just the statistics say.
So Divyesha, you want to know how did I get to know Labubu in the first place? It was all
Yeah.
to do with Blackpink. Like, I saw one of the video that Lisa was on, and she tries to open different kinds of Labubu boxes, and she said, "Oh, I hope I got this one." And once she opens the box, it's just something else. But the whole concept of the mystery boxes is very fascinating, because the user is always anticipating that they will get one of the kind of maybe Labubus or any other kind of thing. So to an extent, a lot of dopamine is created in the mind, and that's what excites them during the entire process. So it's not just about Labubu and the whole fascination about it, it's much more than that. So
Exactly. I think that's where marketers need to understand that it's not always about the product itself. It's not always about the message. It's more about how you present it and how you deliver it, which actually creates that fascination amongst the audience.
exactly. And you know what? Kinder Joy was doing this as well. Yeah, the Kinder Joy, you never knew what the only thing you could identify was this was the Kinder for a boy or for a girl. That only you knew, but you never would know what's inside it. Regardless, maybe you would be
Oh,
given five collections of, okay, maybe you'll get one of this, but it started from the very beginning. The concept is not new, but what made it more fascinating to people is the fact that there are so many different kinds of collections of Labubus or any of it, and many of the competitors out there have replicated the same approach as well.
exactly.
So now, Divyesha, let's talk about. I know sometimes hiccups, as you know, hiccups also happen, like mismatches. So
Hmm.
during the process of recruitment, sometimes everything looks good on paper for many of the candidates, but sometimes they might not be the right kind of fit. So sometimes when I'm thinking about the same example, I also see it in terms of influencers. Maybe you might hire influencer, but they might not actually be the right kind of person for your brand. So how do you
Hmm.
actually think that brands can avoid being in such kind of situations?
Right. I think this is a really good question as well. Mismatches happen all the time. In HR, again, we come to know the mismatch much later. So sometimes these mismatches are not visible in the start. Like you said, everything is perfect on paper or in the interview stage, but sometimes it's invisible and you get to know only after you experience and you learn from it. So coming to the marketing side of it, from an influencer's perspective, rather from a company's perspective, if an influencer is endorsing a lot of brands at once, for example, the audience's trust kind of shakens a little bit, because you start seeing it as, oh, like, this influencer is probably endorsing for this and this. Do they really support this brand? Do they really connect with the brand? So this is one thing that marketers need to keep in mind. Timing is very important, and all the other endorsements that they do. This is one part of it. Another thing that is important is the role. Like, what kind of role is your influencer playing in your audience's life? You have a lot of types of influencers. You have the entertainer, like memes, trends. That is the main focus. And you have those who kind of educate, and there are ones who show you what's in your bag, or they show you their daily lives, and you feel that connect, like, I know what this person does on a Tuesday. What is your brand looking for, and how do you associate this to the type of influencer is very important, because your audience needs to connect. You cannot just run behind the likes or followers. So yeah, I think this is exactly where marketers need to focus on to avoid any sort of mismatch.
Understood. And you know what? At the end of the day, all companies just ask one question: what's the return on investment looking like? And how should
Mhm.
brands actually measure the success of the influencer? Like, how what's the system looking like?
So again, in a usual company, ROI would be about sales, about revenue. This is what companies are built for. And the same goes with brands as well. But here we're talking about influencers who connect with the audience. We're talking about the kind of impact that they create. It's not just sales. So I think the key things that you look at would be reach. The whole point of having an influence on board is that you reach out to their audience, of course, their target audience, but also to similar other audiences. You can tap into the audience of other similar influencers. So reach is very important. Has this influencer got people talking about your brand? So that is one of the key things, and resonance is very important. What kind of action has been taken? Sometimes influencers do things which they don't even know are going to be so viral, and you have all these other influencers kind of following that trend. So then you remember, like, oh, the OG was this particular influencer. So have they created that kind of an impact? That is one important thing. And of course, the main thing is conversion. Did you get more purchases? Did you get more downloads on your website? But I think above all these points is the brand lift. And I think I would like to bring back the example of Better in Denim, Cat's Eye. You can tell at this point that this is one of my favorite commercials. So yes, I think I find myself going to a mall and looking for Gap, because they have repositioned themselves as a youth brand at this point, which I did not see it like that before. So when I go to a mall, I want to see what collection do they have. I think that's what an influencer should be doing. They lift the brand from where it already was. And as for damage control, I think we've seen this a lot. It's exactly how people think of it. When you see any controversy happening with a certain influencer and they are associated with a brand, what's the first thing that they do? They A notice goes out.
Hmm.
Now, why does this happen? Because they need to assess the impact first of all. Is the controversy that big that it has affected the value of the brand? If it's that big, what needs to be done, or is it like a temporary damage which can be fixed? So you assess the situation first and the impact, and then you need to take a decision as soon as possible, because the audience is always hooked onto what's happening next. So you decide whether you want to take a break or you want to completely cut off from the brand. And finally, you communicate. You need to tell your audience. You have to be transparent and authentic, because that is the key factor that the audience is looking for. And I think finally you just learn. You adapt from what has happened, and a lot of other brands can also learn from what happens with certain influencers. So yeah, I think it's all about understanding as much as you can about how influencers and the audiences kind of work hand in hand to make a brand what it is.
I just realized one thing. I never asked who was your most influential influencer actually. Who would you pick?
Oh, that's a good question. Got there. Um, at this point, again, I am not someone who buys things. I don't really purchase things because an influencer says so. A very difficult audience for a marketer. But I would say, of course, because I'm a BTS fan, one of the members, for example, RM, he's big on art and literature. I have actually bought a lot of books that he has recommended. And no, this was not an advertisement. He just went live and he showed us his favorite books. But, this was not meant to be an advertisement. But I see in bookstores, there's a specific section that says RM's recommendation. So you see what an influencer can do even without trying. This is the impact. And I think, yeah, right now for me, he's like a person who really influences me when it comes to art and literature.
That's actually very nice to hear. Like, to be honest, I was thinking which of the BTS member would you mention, and I actually had my bet on RM actually.
You know, a true friend.
So now this comes to the end of our podcast. Thank you so much, Divyesha. Really nice, insightful. Like, to be honest, so many different concepts you have spoken about throughout this entire podcast. This could have been a very simple podcast. What is influencer marketing and all of this? But I like how it's a very fresh take from your side that you have spoken in so much detail with so much of passion. It shows like maybe you should become an influencer going forward.
I hope
Because
so.
yeah, because you have given so much of insights about how the way people think. Because regardless whether in recruitment or you're an influencer, it's all about the human element which plays a very important role in all of this. At the end of the day, you want to know, Divesha, why I became an influencer? Is because
What?
of I wanted to actually connect with my audience. I realized that out there people wanted to learn more about the concepts I knew about, and I realized that, you know what, if I can explain to someone in the most simplest way possible, let me actually build something along those lines. Let me actually start this podcast. And this is the very reason why I actually started this podcast in the first place, is to actually bring very like minded people on the same podcast and give the word out there. So that's the reason why I always wanted to become an influencer. And today it was a cherry on top. How we have explained each part of it. Now I'm actually happy why I became one in the first place. Because if I can give that kind of knowledge to people and I can actually create that kind of connection, I've achieved it.
I completely agree with you. This was something that we had discussed earlier in the podcast about age groups. And I am someone who is chronically online and on TikTok, but I still watch 40 minutes of your podcast every week. So you can understand how much of an influencer you've become.
Yeah, and I always try to see like I want to tell people's journey over here, how I can relate different fields into one. End of
Mhm.
the day, it's all about how you can see that connection from a very different perspective. How do you see it? How do you view it from a very different mindset and so on? Thank you so much, Divyesha, for joining me today on this podcast. A very nice, fresh conversation. And to be honest, I've learned a lot from you today. Even though I'm a marketer, like I've learned so many different kinds of aspect of influencer marketing and so on. Really, a nice job from your part. I really love the whole conversation that we had today.
Same here. Like I mentioned, I am so happy to finally be on this podcast. And again, thank you so much for having me here. I really look forward to this being telecasted and, of course, for the next podcast as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And to all the viewers out there, we'll see you in the next podcast and have a good day.